All right, so a few more people are still going to be joining us today, but I think that we can all go ahead and get started. So thank you all so much for coming to our first ever panel conversation about writing portfolios. We are so excited to have you all on here. Just because of the volume of people on this call, all attendees do not have video and cannot unmute themselves. The only folks who can turn on their videos and unmute themselves are our panelists or Alliance staff members who are joining us today. But feel free to type in the chat box if you want to say hi to everybody, and use the Q&A feature to list out questions that you want to ask our panelists. So before we get started, we're going to do a brief introduction to the writing portfolio category in the Scholastic Awards. And I'm going to ask my colleagues here to introduce themselves before you all meet your panelists. So I can start. My name is Katie Bonner. I am an Associate Manager of Programs at the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers. And I work with our Region at Large program especially, and supporting some of our regional programs. Patrick, do you want to take it from here?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Patrick Reynolds. I am the Exhibitions Manager for the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers. So I work with Katie as well as Manny and Hadel, my other colleagues here, on a number of exhibitions programs across the organization.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hadel Enriquez. I am the New York City Program Manager. I support the New York City Writing and Art regions through submissions, special exhibitions, and virtual ceremonies.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Manny Blasco. I'm a programs coordinator here at the Scholastic Awards, and I work with Katie and Hadel on the Region at Large and New York City regional programs.
Thanks, everybody. So we are, again, thrilled today to be joined by our panelists from around the country who are all writers, educators, and Scholastic Awards judges. So they know what they're talking about when it comes to writing portfolios in general, but also writing portfolios for the Scholastic Awards. Before we jump into a very exciting conversation with them, I want to hand it over to my colleague Patrick just to give a brief introduction to the writing portfolio category of the Scholastic Awards.
Thanks, Katie. So the writing portfolio category is one of our most exciting and prestigious categories. It is open exclusively to seniors, so in the 12th grade. You can submit 2 writing portfolios, and you can also submit individual submissions in addition. Each portfolio requires 6 works, a personal statement, and an artist statement. The Gold Medal Portfolio Award, which is the highest portfolio award, provides students with a $10,000 scholarship as well as a $1,000 prize for that student's educator. And for silver medal portfolios, the student scholarship prize is $1,000 and $250 for the educator. And we're dropping a link to that category description as well. So you can just click to go to our website if you need more info.
Thanks, Patrick. And while we are having our panel conversation, my colleagues Manny and Hadel will be monitoring our Q&A box. So I'm just gonna let them tell you a little bit about how that process will go so that you know where to ask your questions and when.
Yes, thank you, Katie. Hi, everyone. After our panelists have their discussion, the last half of today's session, we're going to have a Q&A session. So we ask that everyone take a look at the bottom of their toolbar, and you'll see a Q&A box there. You can ask all of your questions in there for your panelists, any questions about portfolios, how to enter them in there, and just make sure, to avoid duplicating any questions, just take a quick look through them. If you have any questions that you want answers to, you can upvote one of the questions, and we'll get to those questions as best as we can.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And with that, I think it's time to turn it over to our panelists. So can we get started with some introductions? Maybe Intikana, if you want to start with introducing yourself and we'll just go around.
Yes, peace and blessings, everybody. Much love to everybody that's on the Zoom call. This is awesome. I'm really excited about this panel. My name is Inti Kana. I am an artist. I am an educator. I work with students at all different age levels and grade levels, from elementary through middle school, high school, and college. We work on creative writing, music, film, poetry, spoken word, and multimedia. And I've been a juror with Scholastic for 3 years now, and it's been a very wonderful experience learning myself from the students and their incredible writing. And I'm really excited to be able to provide any kind of insight I can to everyone, to help everyone here be able to share their best work and feel confident with their submissions. Thank you.
My name's Diane Osborne. I live in Texas, but I was born and raised in Indiana. I work at Texas State University in the Curriculum and Instruction Department, and I'm part of Central Texas Writing Project. And I've been the coordinator and a judge for the Scholastic, I think about 10 or 11 years now. And it's just one of my favorite things in the year, and all of our TCs, our teachers that help us, love it, and they ask to come back and judge every year. And writing portfolio is a popular one, so we're really excited. I'm also a piano teacher, and I'm doing that online right now too, so it's very different. And I work with a lot of writing teachers, and we just love sharing our writing strategies with fellow teachers and students. So welcome, and I'm so excited to be here tonight.
I'm a English teacher in Virginia. I am actually from Antigua, so I'm a transplant in the US. This is only my second year as a Scholastic judge, but it has been an eye-opener for me because it made me realize a lot about myself as an English teacher and as a student of the arts. And I'm excited for this new chapter to start. It's saying my connection is.
Michelle, you're freezing up a little bit. We heard everything that you said, but you're frozen a little. Oh, you unfroze, but then you froze again.
Hi, everyone. My name is Leila Lois Beard, and I'm the adjudication coordinator for the LA region. This is my 5th year working with Scholastic, and I coordinate a panel of, 15 to 20 judges here in the Los Angeles area. And we really enjoy it. We really love reading all of your work to see where you are, what you care about, what affects you in your life. A little bit more about me. I have taught middle school and high school English. I live in Altadena. I have a dog and 2 sons. And I'm a writing fellow with the National Writing Project, and I have been for about 12 years now. And we have our offices at Cal State LA. So I'm super excited to be here to give advice.
Well, thanks so much, everybody. I think with that, we're gonna get started with our first question. And so to jump into things, if you could describe the most standout portfolio of writing works you've encountered, what about that particular portfolio jumped out at you? What stuck with you since then? And I guess if you can't think of a specific portfolio, what might that ideal portfolio look like to you?
Is there anybody who wants to grab that, or can I jump on it?
You can go for it, Intikana.
So great question, really great question. I would say one thing to keep in mind for all the writers is that everyone that's judging your pieces, they're looking at lots and lots and lots of work. And they're doing it for hours and hours on end throughout the day, sometimes multiple days. And when you're writing, you got to think about your audience, right? So if your audience in this scenario for the submission are people reading, sitting down in a quiet environment for hours, you want to get straight to the point. You want to catch their attention. You want to say from the very beginning, I got something worth reading and I want you to take it in. And for the portfolio piece, you definitely want to have different pieces that showcase the versatile elements of your writing, to show how different you could be with a different style. So one could be a poem, one could be a different piece. But however you choose to write it, just really think about who's listening and don't be afraid to be yourself. Because sometimes I know people go back and forth between, I think this is what the person wants from me. And don't write like that. Don't write with the intent to try to impress me or make me like it, or use vocabulary words, for instance, that you may not normally use, but you want to use to impress me. Only if it's true to your story, if it helps what you're saying, and it's true to the way you speak and the way you want to express yourself, then do that. But effort. I want to be able to see that you've been rereading your work, proofreading, didn't look like you just sent it that day and that was all you did. Just that extra time shows me, I don't know who this student is, but they care and they're taking their time. And that'll make me look at it with even more of a very serious eye. But those are just a few notes that I would like to add.
I agree with that. And one thing I would say, just be very passionate. Tell about something that you really know or really want, what means a lot to you, that comes through in the writing and really does grab the right reader's attention and make it stand out. Just really be happy with how you're writing. And also, I have the themes. It doesn't have to have a theme, but sometimes tying the pieces together is helpful and helps you remember that a little better.
I would have to say I have one specific portfolio, probably about the first year that we started with adjudication here in LA, through the writing project. And it was about, this girl talked about the power of wearing red lipstick, and it was one of her personal narratives. And that piece, it spoke to me. I was so invested in this piece because you could see that she told the story from, observing her mother wearing red lipstick, and she couldn't wait to wear this red lipstick when she got old enough. And, so it went from, being, excited about this when she was a little girl. And then you could see how in different stages of the story, you could see her growth as a writer, as well as how she's growing up to get ready for her moment to wear this red lipstick, to, I think it was like a school event. So that one piece was the one for me that stood out as far as within a portfolio, but it made me go back to that portfolio and review it again. I wanted to go back and read that particular story. So I became invested in everything else. And I can say that even through, she had this, this one thing where within the whole portfolio, you could see growth. You could see ones where, they're not so great. They're engaging, but I didn't feel like there was a personal voice in there just yet. But then as I begin to read more, I could see how that personal voice was emerging in different areas. So I think, what I look for in a portfolio is that originality, something that speaks to me. I want to know that you care about something. What is it that you care about? Like, what makes you tick? And I think that's where I become very invested, in reading the writing. And yeah, I think when you sit down to write and you're thinking about having passion come through in your writing, I feel like, you want to put yourself in there. You want to be invested in yourself. and you want that to be reflected in your writing. And I think when you do that, I think that's when people can connect. It's about, you know, the person making a connection with you. Like when you go to an interview, you know, for a job, you want someone to be able to connect with you. So I want to sympathize, I want to empathize when I'm reading your writing.
Thank you all so much for sharing. And Leo Lois, I think that your answer actually leads pretty well into our next question, which is, what do you as educators and writers consider or advise your students to consider when selecting works for a portfolio, especially when they have this huge body of work to choose from and they're really narrowing it down to what 6 pieces represent me as a writer?
I'll jump in. I would say something to really consider, and it's a hard thing to consider because it's something you'll be working on for the rest of your life. But first, identifying who you are, who you at least wish to project yourself as you are in your writings. Who are you, and what best represents you? You know, no matter what, if you get selected or you don't get selected, what do you feel, win or lose? You feel, I feel strong with this. This is, and again, not first just trying to adhere to what we may want, but what do you feel? And also, I found that very bold, fearless pieces that are not afraid. I've been very intrigued by those pieces because I've felt when I'm reading it, amongst the different pieces, there's a sense of bravery that pops out, whereas some writings may be a little bit more hesitant and more safe, which is fine. But I'm definitely, I've been moved before by some of the more fearless writings. And I would just say just one more thing before I pass it on is sometimes we talk about very personal stories, right? And there are stories that get into the pieces that are really difficult. You know, many people experience a lot of different things, and I know our young people are dealing with a lot, and writing is always a place a safe space to be able to share who you are and not feel judged. So, you know, I would definitely encourage you to be yourself, but I would say, because I know from submitting things from myself, from my end as a writer, sometimes what you don't want to do is look like you're asking for pity, or I wouldn't even want you to position yourself as a victim in any situation. Whatever it is that you dealt with, any adversities, any difficulties, any real life serious issues that students have brought up in pieces, I want you to approach it in a way where, how does this incident, mistake, or whatever it was, what does it tell me about you, your strength, how you've been able to overcome? Because obviously you've made it, right? You're here. So, you know, show me what lessons have you learned through those different scenarios. You know, I've had students that have written about people that pass away, or, you know, very serious issues or things that they've experienced firsthand or witnessed. Don't be afraid to share those things, but just don't try to say, hey, you know, feel bad for me. Just say, yo, I went through something, but I'm strong because of those things. And show me that, you know, and it doesn't just have to be strength. You know, you can be vulnerable, and sometimes weakness can be seen as a strength. But I would just encourage you to put yourself out there in a way where, you know, you feel confident and you're not looking for anyone else's validation.
Yeah, I really agree with that. All about personal experience and powerful writing, what you are going through, history, just powerful stories to me are when describe things that have happened, or maybe personal thoughts and ideas that you may have, what's going on. Something like that really sticks out, I think, when we're looking at the pieces. And then also being honest, just kind of being vulnerable and sharing. You can really write from your heart, and it comes through in your reading. the person who's reading.
So I think, what I've worked, with my students on when getting together a portfolio or writing their, statement for college or what have you, uh, I think it's, about stretching as a writer. So how do you stretch? Diversifying your portfolio. Do you have enough of the lighter material versus maybe heavier material? Are you taking risks? Like, do I see that you're being vulnerable in your writing? And again, what can I connect to, and share, even if it's something that's a social issue, like right now, social justice. How can I continue to connect with you as I'm reading through your portfolio? I like, finding, areas where, you're trying something completely different. Let's just say in poetry, you physically or, and mentally really playing with words. I love when a student is playing with words and you can see that they're having a great time. I think about that fresh approach. What's fresh and new about this? Have I heard this before? And I think that's how I start to kind of, think about, as far as how the scoring's going to go, and I think anytime you really push yourself to think outside of everything and really take, time to think about something in a different way than you've even been, I guess, taught to think about it, that's when I perk up, and, um, you know, with the other panelists and judges rather that we have here in LA, they're thinking about the same thing, thinking about that originality, that voice. We want to know, as far as your youth voice, like, what do you believe in? There has to be a magic to it, that where's those magic moments? So if I can see magic moments, vulnerability, a youth voice of standing up for something, um, you know, really digging deep into something that you love or someone that you love or something that you loved, past tense, that's when I feel like I've gone on this journey with you in your portfolio and I go, wow, like I'm blown away. Like I want to walk away, feeling blown away and then wanting to kind of go back and read, some of my favorite pieces, from your portfolio.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. So our next question is a little more technical. The Scholastic Awards require both an artist statement, which is about the portfolio, and also a personal statement, which is about the author. So what would you panelists, if you were jurors in the upcoming season, what would you like to learn about the portfolio and the author from each of these statements?
Might keep that same order. So I would say I want to see. I love that magic. When you said magic, I really feel that that's a really good word, because I want to see your power. Show me your powers. Show me how diverse your writings could be. Show me how far you're willing to go to not take the easy way out, to just finish it. And I really like consistency. So for example, if you have a piece and you start off with a theme and you're going throughout the whole piece and I'm reading, I love when you bring it back, especially when something in the beginning comes back at the end. Or some people who write movies, they say that they think of the end before they write the beginning, right? So you could do things like foreshadowing. You could think of foreshadowing early. You can work towards getting to the end once you know what the ending is. That's one philosophy, right? I say that because, especially in let's say the personal statement, I want to know. I want to know who you are, what you stand for. I want to see how much this means to you. I could tell by sometimes the things that students say and don't say how much this meant to them. Or sometimes I could see it was just a class assignment. They had to do it, they had to submit it in. And that's okay, because you're getting the exercise in for writing, which is awesome. But I want to see someone who brought it home, who worked on it on the weekend, who asked, adults around them to proofread it, check it over. Did I spell everything right? All those kind of things are really good. And I want to, this is important. Don't shy away from your identity, from your culture, from your traditions, from your ancestry, from what you believe in, from where you come from. Whatever your strongest convictions are, don't be afraid to put that on paper. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing. And if the person reading it doesn't agree, feel free to simply write it in a way where even if someone may not agree for whatever reason what you're writing, they have to really respect it, because the way you wrote about it was so, I see through your eyes now. I'm able to see through your eyes. And sometimes people say kids don't know nothing, they're too young, they don't have experiences. And you do. A lot of times, the experiences you have up until age 16 changes your life forever and will determine and dictate your life for the rest of your life. So right now, you are at a very important point where you're deciding who you are and you're putting that out in the world. So, and last thing I would say is, something that I've seen that stuck out to me, which I love, for example, and say it for all the diverse students. We have students from all over the world, from different places, and especially in Scholastic, I've seen some international students, right? Wherever you're from, if you're gonna write about your Blackness, about, the languages you speak, whatever it is, feel free. Like, I love that. I love when I seen a piece about a young girl who was talking about nature and connecting it to her innate Blackness. And I found that so beautiful. And she wrote about it in such an elegant way that I was there reading it like, ooh, you have an old soul. And if you have an old soul, share that, show that. Don't be afraid to put that out there. So, I just want to encourage, no matter where you're from, represent that. If you speak more than one language, feel free to throw some of that in there so I could see if there's certain phrases that you grew up around that maybe your parents said or family members said or the people in the neighborhood said. Those things, paint the picture for me, which I will recommend a few books if we can at some point that some authors that you might want to check out that I think are good.
Well, that was beautiful. I agree. Very nice. The summary of mine for the personal statement would just be, I really want to feel your passion, and also like why, maybe make it obvious why you're writing, what this is meaning to you, and how we can feel the same about your writing that you do. I feel that that's where the connection is, and it's just very powerful. That's all.
I think, with the personal statement, don't be afraid to put things out there. Don't be afraid to say, I started a Harry Potter like neighborhood club, and I've been the president for the last 6 years. I want to know, those types of things. And I know Scholastic wants to as well. What they need the personal statement for is for the scholarship. So, it's like, do not hide. It is your time to shine. So, if there's these little things that you think, oh, they wouldn't care about that, or that's, not being mature. Like, I don't want, anyone to know. You never know, how much someone's going to appreciate you for putting something out there. Again, make that connection. So really just shine. So, even when you think about writing that personal statement and an artist statement, get someone, even if it's not your parents or your teacher, just someone that you totally respect, that's, in your class, maybe it's your writing partner or they're in your writing group, to read it and just to give you, feedback, and totally be, open, to the advice. But I would say on those two pieces, definitely, make sure that you get feedback, because sometimes when you're not giving all that you can, or you think that like no one's going to care about this, part of who you are, sometimes it takes a friend to say, hey, you're forgetting this thing. Or when you did this, when you had the shoe drive, give a pair, get a pair. What happened? You didn't say anything about that, or all these things you do, and volunteering with your family. Like, they may want to know that, So I would say, definitely have someone else that you totally respect, or just a really great friend look at your work. On the artist statement, I love reading about the process. It's okay to talk about, even if there was a struggle with this. The struggle is real for everyone, especially for writers. But I don't know. It's a little different sometimes if someone's a little too glossy about everything, like everything just went great. I really love writing, and just, I don't know that that's a realistic portrayal of, like, the process and what you do. But, I'm okay with hearing that, what, it took me a really long time to make decisions about this. I just made a decision 2 days before, submitting this. The process was slow, but I met my goal. Like, I got it done. My parents were, cheering me on, but I dealt with writer's block. I dealt with, like, what to do. Like, I struggled with which, piece of poetry, whatever it may be, piece of flash fiction, but, I'd like to see that, you're telling that story, because there is a story behind any piece that we write. Even if you're publishing it, or it's just for your teacher or what have you, we all have a journey with every piece of writing, right? And, sometimes even bringing things to a close, like, how do I finish this piece so that I can actually get it into the portfolio? I don't know how this ends. I'm not sure. Like, reflect on that as you're writing the artist's statement. I think people would love to hear it and really applaud you, for, getting through with things. So I'd like to, read about the gritty part of writing, because we all go through it. I do not romanticize writing, writing myself or teaching it. It's a process, but I enjoy the process. I totally, there's nothing else like it, as far as an outlet for your feelings. So yeah, see what you can put some grit in there. Let me know how rigorous this was to put it together.
Well, thank you all so much. I am already feeling inspired by all of your answers. I see that our Q&A is blowing up, so I'm going to ask you all one more question before we turn it over to students' questions. Thinking about this time in a student's career where they're putting together a portfolio at the end of their high school career, they probably have amassed all of this writing that they're just looking, how can I best put this together to represent myself? What is one final cumulative summary piece of advice that you would offer a student who's thinking about, how can I represent myself through this body of works?
Wow, that's intense. Think about how. Okay, so there's a few things. To represent yourself, feel free to use all the devices, literary devices that are there at your disposal, right? So if there's certain things that, for example, you're hesitant to speak directly about and straightforward about, use a metaphor. A metaphor is something that doesn't use like or as, and you're making a comparison, a connection, and you can show, instead of saying just what that one thing is, where maybe you might feel like you're completely judged, maybe you turn into a beautiful metaphor where the reader doesn't, maybe they can get an idea, but maybe you don't have to put everything out on Front Street if you feel like you don't want to. Put the sounds, okay, so you have our 5 senses. I share this with my students a lot. We have our 5 senses. So we see, we hear, we touch, we feel, we smell, right? Think about, whatever you're writing about, help me see what you see, help me hear what you hear, make me feel what you feel, right? If you're writing and you talk about food. Maybe it's a meal that abuela used to cook for you and it was your favorite meal. I want to smell the food. I want to know, I want to get hungry reading about that, right? If you talk about, you know, a place you grew up or a place you visited or something, I want to hear the sounds. I want to hear the people. I want to hear the accents. I want to see the descriptions, you know, of the things. Is it a clean place? Is it a dirty place? What are the colors? Bring it to life for me through the paper. Provide me with the details that I need to bring it to life visually in my mind, right? Because everyone's going to see a different thing. Whatever you write, people are going to interpret it based on their life experiences and things like that. So you got to try to think of the person's mind who's reading it and how to communicate with them. Because that's, you know, it's an important part of at least the process in being reviewed. And definitely want to repeat being fearless. That's a huge part. And I have a few books that I just want to mention. One that was on my top list that I really, really want to share with y'all. So it's a book. I don't know if any of y'all are familiar with it, but it's called The Poet X by a really great author named Elizabeth Acevedo. She's a really awesome writer, and this won a number of awards. It won the, it's a whole award for excellence, young adult literature. She's in a lot of the schools. She got the National Book Award, sold a lot of books. Really amazing what she's doing. But what I love about her writing, and from the very gate, if you get this book, or even if you get a chance to look at it in the library, read the first chapter. Just read the first chapter. You can even read the first few pages of the first chapter. Immediately, she takes me to Harlem. She takes me to Harlem, and I'm in Harlem. She just brought me to Harlem, and I know Harlem, but the way she writes about it, if I didn't know, now I know. And it's such a great way. It's one thing to say, this story takes place in this location, and this is the date, and this is the time. No, I'll just give you, just real quick, if I could just read maybe the first few lines of the page. I don't know what time is looking like. I gotta be careful. But I just want to just share this with you. The summer is made for stoop sitting. And since it's the last week before school starts, Harlem is opening its eyes to September. Those are the first 3 lines. Off those 3 lines, I know where we're at. I know what time of the year it is. I know school's starting. I know it's that September vibe in New York City where everyone wants to get their clothes and everyone's thinking about it. In 3 lines, I'm already there. And then from everything on, she continues. She says, watch the old church ladies, chancletas flapping against the pavement, their mouths letting loose a train of island Spanish as they spread he said, she said, right? So already she's bringing me into Harlem, and there's some really great elements in there. So for all of you writers, I would definitely say look into that piece. And that's also a book that's used in the schools a lot. There's another one that's really good. If y'all are familiar with it, got turned into a movie, but The Hate U Give, really awesome book by Angie Thomas. It's the #1 New York Times bestseller, really cool. But also another book that's vulnerable, that's real, that's fearless, that's bold, and that has been rewarded for really great writing. And my students love these books. So, you know, feel free to check that out. And the last things I'll show you, which, you know, we're flaunting the Scholastic books, but these are the writers, the best writers each year. And if any of you can get your hands on any of these books or PDF files or anything that's online, these are the Scholastic best writers every year. So they release a book. Review the people who won before. Look at those works. See what already won and see what won about it, or what about it made people say, this is excellent. So, you know, be critical of yourself, you know, but at the same time, be liberated to be yourself. Okay? Hopefully that helps.
That's great. That's great. And I just wanted to add a couple keywords to kind of summarize, just like I said before, passion, make it powerful, and have your voice come through. That every story needs to have a voice, and could be anything that meaningful to you, or what you've been thinking about, or what you want to think about, maybe something you you're hoping to do in the future even, but bringing it all together and making that connection with your reader and yourself.
Okay, I'm gonna put on my teacher hat here for a second. Start early, everyone, start early. Um, I'm gonna be real technical here. So, so you're done with your submissions to Scholastic, okay? So I would take the winter break to just start looking through and pulling the pieces out, start dividing those pieces up with I knocked it out of the park and I really killed it. This is the pile of those pieces. These are like good, but I feel like I could have stretched a little bit more. And these are well, no, not this time. I showed, better strengths in different areas in these two piles. I would, say really be intentional about carving out time to, like, maybe every other Sunday early morning before everyone gets up, not just to write because that's my magic time, but to also just, again, get reacquainted with those, pieces, know exactly why you chose or you're choosing those pieces, or why something's just not hitting the way that it should, and then what you need to do to, continue the journey with that piece. So for me, the biggest, piece of advice I have is make the time. Don't cheat yourself, because we know it doesn't feel good when we work all the way to the 12th hour and then you're stressed because you're like, oh my God, I had to submit this, script or what have you to get into film school, what have you, but I know it's rushed and I should have had more time on it. Being a senior, you already know about time management. Just start early, carve out specific time where you need to go through and work on your portfolio. And I'm going to tell you, you're going to have just a weight off of your shoulders, and knowing that you are putting your best foot forward, that you feel really good about your writing and where it's going. And you just feel confident. It's about having that confidence. And then also you achieved a goal, and, mom and dad, us, the parents, we're not breathing down your throat like, well, did you get it done? Like, how does it look? I need to see something. I don't know what you're working on. Like, mom, dad, I have it together. Auntie, grandma, I have it together. Like, whatever it is, but just know that you need to give yourself time. Be good to yourself as a writer. Be good to yourself.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm about to hand it over to Manny and Hadel to take questions from our Q&A box. But before I do, Leolis, that was a perfect segue to remind everybody to check your deadlines, because it is not too late to start early. Deadlines start December 1st, and you can find them on our website at the link in the chat box. So one plug for that, be sure to know your deadline. And Hadel and Manny, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome, thank you. So we have a ton of questions that came in from students. So we'll kind of just run down some of the most popular ones. So here's a question for our panelists. Do you recommend submitting the same type of work in the writing portfolio? For example, only poetry or just of one category? Or do you recommend adding different writing mediums across different categories? So like poetry with a personal essay, with a critical essay?
Great question. Great question. I would say if you're really great at multiple things and you feel, and even maybe in your life and your craft, you want to do those different things, then definitely. If your strength is in one category more so and you feel that's your strongest category, I would say go all out for your category, wherever your strengths are. If you try to do everything, you can. I'm not saying you're not able to, you can. Just, it has to be on the same level and even beyond. So, you basically, you'll be as strong as your weakest link, so you don't want to put out something that doesn't show your best. And also consider the length of your pieces. I've seen pieces that are really short that for me, it's easy to go through, which is sometimes helpful. And then there's some pieces that are really long that are like, wow, this is a long piece. But finding the medium, right? If your piece requires you to write just a little bit more, that's good. Just make sure everything you're writing is strong. Try not to repeat yourself. Sometimes we say the same thing in multiple ways. Cut out whatever is unnecessary and just give me the in poetry they would say the bangers. You know, just give me the bangers. Give me the ones, the hits. You know, give me the greatest hits. And yeah, I would say that.
No, I would say to just make sure that you can stand by your work. So I think it really just depends on every writer. If you would work in one genre and your whole portfolio, is all, short story or what have you, or if it's all poetry, or if you have a mixture. I really like when I have a little bit of a mixture. I don't mind that maybe someone has, 3 pieces of poetry and then I'm able to, look at other genres. But that gives me a holistic look at who you are as a writer, your flexibility, and and just just how well you have been able to work in the different genres and your strengths. So I tend to like seeing a little bit of a mix up. But again, if you are a great poet and you're like, I want to be a poet, and I grow up and I've won a couple of competitions, totally showcase that, but do it in a way where it feels like a journey. It feels like, that I'm reading more than poetry here, maybe the way that you approach your writing technically, it almost feels like a story. And then I have a piece of poetry that's very traditional in its approach, and then and non-linear here is poetry. I would definitely say that that would be, something to look at.
Great answers. And I will just vocalize and consolidate some questions for posterity. But this was a very popular question. What kinds of themes are you looking for specifically for the portfolio?
Well, I think it could be anything. Just be very creative and like I said, I keep coming back to this, but make your voice heard in something you're passionate. You really want that. You really want, even if your reader isn't really interested in something that you're talking about, maybe you want to make them so they feel it. They, like he was saying earlier, you want to make them care and hear your voice. But you, at the same time, we want to be creative and be able to see things that what makes you tick. Why do you like to write? Have that come through in your writing.
Yeah, and I would say just one bit of advice for that is do your best to avoid cliches. Okay, try to avoid cliches, and if you end up saying a cliche line, please flip it up or change it up very uniquely to yourself. But also some things that come up a lot in the writings that I've seen, and it happens in poetry, even if you go to a poetry slam or an event where they're reading spoken word, there's a lot of references to, let's say, the sun, to the moon, to the sky, certain things. And I've seen several poems on, let's say, sunsets, or certain things, and it's a beautiful scene. But if you, for example, I seen someone who spoke about that. I saw a few pieces about that, and then later there was one student who wrote about it, but wrote about it better than everybody else. I was like, wow, it was so beautifully driven, even though it was a piece that was written about, or a theme that was used frequently. So if you're gonna use a theme, whatever it is, use it up. Use up the whole theme. Make it feel full. Tell a story, and look up some guidelines on story writing. Story writing is key. What keeps people engaged? Sometimes you want to build them up. you know, so they could see, you know, be surprised at some point in the piece, or there's some element of information that we don't know yet, and then when we find out, we're like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming, or anything like that is always really refreshing. And I would just say, yeah, be your true self. You know, I've seen people talk about native culture, their own native people, or, you know, talk about things in the world that they believe or they feel. Whatever it is, speak strongly about it. You know, if you have things to support, if it's an argument, like if you're making an argument, support your argument, whatever it is. Make sure that if you could throw some facts in there, that's nice. But, you know, have the emotion, that passion element, but then also the logic, the intelligence, like bring a bit of both, you know, and there's intelligence in common experiences. Like I said, you don't have to use big words to impress me. You can use a few small words, but the way you used it, it got to the core of the idea. It got to the essence of what you were trying to say. And in that way, I felt exactly what you were saying. Sometimes, and I'm an adult, I read tremendously. I love writing, but there's words that I've seen students write that I have to go on Google real quick and I have to go, I don't know, I've never seen that word. That's an interesting word. And that's good, and I'll do it. I don't know if everybody does that, or maybe everybody just knows every word, but you know, there's that element of like conversation, like writing, where I just feel like I'm there with you, and you're giving me who you are on paper. So, you know, a little bit of that will help, and I'll pass that on.
I think, you know, theme can help when you know yourself as a writer, and that you need kind of like, you know, a lane to stay in to get to the destination. So theme can help drive, you know, drive you to, you know, kind of connect and make sense of everything, right? You know, I'm hoping that I read some portfolios that have a lot about and reflect what the world is like right now. Social justice issues, I have to be honest, you know, things that are changing, things about change or the need for change, you know, the changing of the seasons. It can be the changing of your life. You're about to go from, you know, high school, you know, off to college, or, you know, you're a young adult. So I think they're, you know, themes are useful, but if you're one who would just like to mix it up and have a big pot of gumbo and have a lot of different things put into that pot, I think that can work as well. You know, it's all about the presentation, right? When we look at a stew or a soup or a gumbo, we expect to see all of these different foods in there that we love to eat, and with a little bit of, you know, pepper on top, you know. So I think, you know, the writing portfolio is the same. So again, if you're passionate about something, you know, what's going on with the youth movement right now, why not? You know, I think it makes for an interesting read. It's something that is near and dear to my you know, my heart as a person, a human being, you know, on earth, and being a woman and a person of color. So yeah, just think about, like, you know, how this will work for you. And maybe you're strong enough to say, you know what, I don't necessarily need a theme, but, you know, for me, I want to jump off of things. I want to slide. I want to twist. I want to flip things. And I want someone to feel that in my writing. I want them to go upside down. I want them to hang from the tree, whatever it might be. And that becomes a theme within itself of just, you know, chaos. But out of chaos comes order. So just definitely, again, if you're starting early, you've got all those things working, and you can really toss them around and figure out what works for you.
So we have another question here. Would it be beneficial for students to submit works that have already won a Scholastic Award in the past?
Sorry, before we start answering, just keeping an eye on the time. I think that this may have to be our last question, just to be respectful of everyone's time tonight, but we'll provide information for how you can contact us afterwards if your question was not answered tonight. All right, sorry, Auntie Kana, I think you're about to.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a rule on that, whether they can or they can't. I would say I would lean, as a writer, I would lean towards no, you know. Um, you know, show us how great you are twice. You know, it's hard to do it once, show us twice. If you already won one, I would say do something different. You know, I probably wouldn't notice if I was reading, if it was sent in before, but I would say for all safety purposes, write something brand new, you know. Be original, you know, and show me your originality, but I want to see technical skill. You know, your technical skill really matters, you know, showing me that you know a few tricks, you know, in terms of writing. I want to hear your personal voice, your voice, not the voice you want people to hear, not someone else's voice, but what you have to say. I think that's important. Um, and help me come back to the question, so I make sure I close on that. It was about, so, oh yeah, so that was my answer to that question. Yeah.
No, I think maybe you would want to, this is an opportunity to publish a different piece, so why not, know that you've already used one piece, for a competition, from a previous year, and, bring another piece to the forefront that represents you. You never know how it's going to be received. And, I think of, even when I'm writing different pieces, they all have almost names, and why and where I was when I wrote it, what did I have to write it for, and different things. So why not give some love to the other, works that you have, and give them, life, give them breath, so I would say, take a chance on some of the other work that you have, in your in your arsenal of, works that you've completed. So.
Well, and as writers, we're constantly challenging ourselves. We should be. So I would have to agree. If you could make the story that you won totally different or build a lot on it, maybe that would be okay. But challenge yourself and do something new, something creative, something that you want to share.
And can I just add one more thing? I would say listen to really good poetry. Try to find some really great poets. Also, read different poets. There's a lot of different poets. There's more old school, new school, in between. People are alive now. People are no longer alive. But try to just experience different poetry. Look online. Ask your teachers, maybe who they like. But I did give you some examples of books to go check out. But just on your own, look up some things. Man, there's a bunch of movies, it's like the movie Slam, that's on Poetry Slam. There's tons of, documentaries on hip hop and different things. So wherever your voice is coming from, just make sure you put it all in there, and just be yourself. It's hard because we live in a world where most people don't know how to be themselves. And when we're not taught who we are, it's really hard to be yourself. But be yourself as much as you can. And also, somebody mentioned a college application and comparing it to this application. I would just say, be aware of what's too much information. You don't have to share everything, but also give us who you are. Don't cut in between, but just be mindful of who's reading. And I've seen some writers use curse words at times. My mind on that is always, if you use a word, it has to be really key to your story. It has to really make a point. It has to really be, you could be quoting someone or something like that. Whatever it is, really make a point. I've seen a few where it was used and I was like, I was blown away with the power in which it was used. And then sometimes it's used for just shock value or something like that. I want to see how great of a writer you are. So, you can use a big bit of, let's say, common language, but show me that you can fit in many rooms. You could talk, the way you talk, but also, be aware that there's teachers reading and things like that, professionals. So just find your common ground in between to where you can communicate being who you are, but, just aware of who's reading.
Well, thank you all so much. I'm seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat box as well, but I can just say that this has been incredibly enlightening to me as someone who works in more of an administrative way with the awards, but reads the pieces for fun. I don't ever judge the works. So this is always exciting for me to hear from all of you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. Both to our panelists, our Alliance staff members, and to all of you who joined us today and asked such thoughtful and insightful questions. It was such a pleasure to have the chance to be with you in this way, especially when we are all over the world and all over the country. For those of you who have questions that were not answered today, please check out our FAQ. Hadel dropped the link in there earlier, and you can also contact us through the website at the link in the chat box now. And this is being recorded, so we will send it out to you after today's session.
And make sure you show love to Katie, to Hadel, to Patrick, to Manny, Diane, Leela, everybody. Y'all did a great job. And this is important. This is really important. So listen to what everybody said, review it, and I'm not sure about everyone else, but I'm on social media. If anyone, for whatever reason, had a question and wanted to leave a post or a comment or tag me in something that you're doing, and if I see you're working, I'm gonna support, and I'll give you some advice maybe or something like that. I'm not gonna write for you, we ain't doing none of that, but I'll give you a feedback or a thought. And especially if you show us a performance or you tag me in a performance at Intikana, INTIKA, or my website, intikana.net. And I really wish the best for y'all, but we gotta go. So
Good luck.
stay blessed.
Thank you all so much. And Intikana, I put your info in the chat too. People can find them there.
yes, at Intikana everywhere.
All right. Thank you all. Have wonderful evenings. Stay warm or cool, depending on where you are.
Follow me.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Peace.